They said, people with low education shouldn't work, just sit there.
I approached the female employee sitting alone by the window. While everyone else was chatting and laughing, she sat quietly at her window seat. Seeing her gaze out the window, holding back tears, I couldn't ignore it. I immediately called all the executives together. From there, events took an unexpected turn. My name is Carter, and I'm 38 years old this year. I used to work in Chicago, but for the past 10 years, I've been working at an overseas branch. Since it was the company's first overseas branch, there weren't enough staff, and not many people were strong in languages, so I was chosen to go. Although I had traveled abroad a few times before, this was my first long-term stay and my first time working overseas, so I was incredibly nervous deep down. However, I tried not to show it and managed to get through the work somehow. Over the past 10 years, a lot has happened, but I've been able to make it through thanks to the support of many people. There were times when I felt the language barrier, and I missed American food. But when I was told I'd be returning to headquarters, I felt a bit missing. I was happy to go back to headquarters, but I thought I would miss leaving here. With those mixed emotions, I boarded the plane back to the US. I've left the overseas branch in the hands of my successors, and they are all outstanding employees. So, I can work at headquarters with peace of mind. After connecting flights and returning to the US, I decided to enjoy a brief moment of rest. American food is truly delicious, no matter what I eat. Even the unhealthy meals I picked up at the supermarket seem to rejuvenate me. Since tomorrow is my first day back at headquarters in 10 years, I decided to go to bed early that night. And the next day, I woke up at 5 a.m. and followed my usual routine. I read a book while soaking up some sunlight, did a bit of light cardio, and then had breakfast. After finishing breakfast, I tidied up my room a little and put on my suit. After carefully checking my appearance, I boarded the train to head to work. While many people prefer commuting by car, I personally like taking the train. The train is always filled with all kinds of people, which makes it interesting, and observing others can reveal a lot. After about 30 minutes on the train, I arrived at the station closest to the office at headquarters. From there, it was about a 5-minute walk, so I strolled leisurely while enjoying the crisp morning air. When I arrived at headquarters, I took the elevator up to my office. As I opened the office door, a scene almost unchanged from 10 years ago greeted me. There were several large windows letting in sunlight. The desks weren't partitioned to create a sense of openness, and the employees were chatting happily. At this company, casual conversation isn't prohibited, and even during work, employees are allowed to chat. However, if you don't produce results, your salary doesn't increase. That's the system. By maintaining moderate communication while working, employees can relieve stress. As a result, their performance keeps improving, and stress levels remain low. I'm back at headquarters. As I took in the familiar sights before me, the realization hit me. I thought to myself how much I loved this vibrant atmosphere, but there was one thing that caught my attention. A woman was sitting all alone by the window. She appeared to be around the same age as me. While other employees were chatting energetically, she was staring out the window without moving at all. She doesn't seem to be working. What's she doing? At first, I thought she was just taking a short break during work, but that didn't seem to be the case. She had been sitting like that for about 30 minutes. Curious about why she wasn't moving, I ended up speaking to her. "You've been staring out the window for a while. Is something wrong?" Startled by the sudden question, the woman quickly turned to face me. She seemed a bit cautious, probably because there was an unfamiliar man standing nearby. However, since she was here, she must be a part of the company, so she hesitantly answered my question.
I didn't have anything to do, so I was just looking outside.
You didn't have anything to do. What about today's tasks?
I already finished everything I was assigned.
To my surprise, the woman had already completed her tasks. However, it was only 11 a.m. It didn't seem possible for her to finish so quickly, and I wondered if she was slacking off, but that didn't seem to be the case. She was gazing sadly at the other employees who were chatting and laughing. I see. Could you tell me more about yourself? To be honest, I just came back to headquarters after 10 years, so I don't know much about the people here yet. The woman looked down for a moment, deep in thought, before slowly starting to introduce herself. Her name was Rachel, and she was 32 years old. She wasn't much younger than me, and I've started to feel a bit more comfortable. Rachel said she started working at a factory after graduating high school. However, she wanted to build a better career, so she dedicated herself to studying for certifications. After earning her qualifications, she applied to various companies for a new job but was rejected by all of them. Finally, a few years ago, she was hired by this company. Rachel had been thrilled to join a company she had secretly admired, but she found it hard to fit in with the workplace atmosphere. Everyone here is so outgoing. It might feel a bit noisy sometimes.
That's not it.
When I looked at Rachel's face, I noticed her eyes were glistening with tears. Did I say something wrong? I thought so at first, but it didn't seem to be because of me. When I listened to her story, I was shocked to learn what had happened. Apparently, the employees here changed their attitude drastically after finding out that Rachel had only a high school diploma. At first, she was warmly welcomed, but as soon as they learned about her educational background, they started ignoring her. Not only that, but she was no longer given meaningful work and was gradually relegated to menial tasks.
They said, people with low education shouldn't work, just sit there.
That's awful. How could they say something so cruel?
But it's fine. It's true that I don't have much education.
Rachel tried to hold back her tears as she said this. Seeing her in such pain was heartbreaking, and I felt as if her emotions were my own. I told Rachel not to worry about what others thought of her, then left her there. After that, I decided to call in all the executives. Do you understand why you're being called in? The executives, unable to respond to my question, exchanged uneasy glances. In truth, I am the president of this company. I had temporarily stepped away from headquarters to focus on expanding our overseas operations, but I never imagined things would turn out like this in my absence. At our company, we hire people regardless of their educational background, and our motto is to evaluate them based on their abilities. That's why we have many employees with only a high school diploma, including Rachel, and I myself am also a high school graduate. When I was at headquarters, judging someone by their education was absolutely unacceptable, and if anyone dared to do so, I would never have let it slide. It's likely that the new employees hired in the last 10 years, along with the newly appointed executives, are the ones responsible for this situation. Standing in front of the executives, I began trembling with anger. You're aware of our company's motto, aren't you? When I asked that, the executives immediately started making excuses. They claimed that they hadn't said anything and that Rachel was neglecting her duties on her own, or that the newer employees were ostracizing Rachel and blaming it on them. I had no desire to protect people so determined to avoid responsibility, nor could I justify keeping them as executives. I understand what you're saying. When I said that, the executives briefly looked relieved, but upon noticing my furrowed brow, they straightened up nervously. "So, you're saying none of this is your fault?" Though they seemed hesitant to answer, they all nodded in agreement. It's the duty of executives to protect employees. If someone is being ostracized, it's your job to make sure that doesn't happen. Finally understanding my point, the executives began to regret their inaction and apologize. In any case, who even approved these people as executives? I left, believing the company would be fine without me, entrusting everything to them while I worked overseas. But at this rate, I can't trust them to run the company. Well, since I'll be at headquarters for a while, I can keep an eye on things. Before long, Rachel was assigned tasks just like everyone else. She started showing a brighter expression and seemed to be gradually building rapport with her team. I occasionally dropped by the office to check on things, but there was no sign of her being excluded anymore. On the contrary, other employees were now approaching Rachel at her desk. Curious as to why, I asked one of the employees and learned an astonishing fact. Although Rachel had only been assigned menial tasks before, she was now able to handle all types of work. She hadn't been taught by anyone, nor had she asked other employees questions about their tasks. Despite that, she handles everything from minor issues to customer complaints and even actively answers questions that other employees don't understand. I couldn't understand how she was able to do all of this, and it puzzled me. "Rachel, do you have a moment?"
Yes, what's going on?
"How are you able to manage all the tasks?" Unable to contain my curiosity, I decided to ask her directly. Her response left me astonished.
I studied so I could be ready to work anytime.
But, and I mean no offense, you didn't really interact much with the other employees, did you?
That's right. So, I stole it.
You stole it. When I asked for details, Rachel explained that she had stolen other employees' skills. Since no one would teach her, she decided to learn by observing their actions. For example, she watched how others handled complaint calls or identified the traits of those who brought in new clients. She absorbed various skills this way. Well, can someone really learn all that just by watching? I wondered, but it turned out Rachel had a knack for observing people. She explained that while casual observation doesn't reveal much, deliberate and consistent observation over several days allows her to identify what makes someone unique or what their strengths are. Honestly, as she shared this, I felt nothing but amazement. I enjoy people watching on trains and elsewhere, but I've never been able to discern someone's essence from it. I began to suspect that Rachel might be an exceptionally talented individual. For some time after, a thought kept lingering in my mind. It felt like a waste to let Rachel remain in her current position as an ordinary employee. I wanted to entrust her with more significant responsibilities, but she had started earning the respect of her colleagues, and I wasn't sure if she would accept my idea. What I had in mind was for Rachel to work as my personal assistant. After much deliberation, I decided to discuss it with her. "I'd like you to work as my assistant. What do you think about that, Rachel?"
What? Me as your assistant?
Rachel looked surprised and seemed a bit hesitant. "If you want to take on more significant responsibilities, I'd really like you to consider it." Rachel nodded quietly, and that's how she began working as my assistant. To get to know Rachel better, I wanted to gather more information about her. With that in mind, I decided to invite her to a bar for a deep conversation. Once she had a few drinks and was slightly tipsy, I started asking her about her past. Rachel grew up in a single-parent household and said she struggled a lot financially when she was younger. Her mother was always working and never home, and when she was often irritable. Even so, Rachel described her mother as a wonderful woman who always thought of her and had secretly saved money for her college education. When Rachel reached high school, she started working part-time to contribute to living expenses and save for college. But during that time, her mother collapsed from overwork. It happened just before her college entrance exams, and Rachel didn't know what to do. She felt that if she went to college, her mother wouldn't be able to manage on her own. She also doubted she could handle both her studies and covering her mother's living expenses. Thinking realistically, Rachel tearfully decided to give up on college. Her mother, knowing how capable Rachel was academically, tried to convince her to pursue higher education, but in the end, her mother accepted Rachel's decision, understanding the challenges they faced. Hearing her story, I couldn't stop tears from welling up in my eyes.
Please don't cry, Carter. But, I'm actually really happy with my life.
Seeing Rachel smile as she said that, I felt a surge of indescribable emotions welling up inside me. From that point on, Rachel worked diligently for the company. She came up with ideas I could never have thought of, and even resolved issues when they arose. At that moment, I realized just how brilliant Rachel was. She could quickly come up with the best solutions, and always showed care for others. Even as someone who has met countless individuals in my line of work, I was genuinely astonished by her intelligence. Would you be interested in taking an IQ test?
What? Me, taking an IQ test? I don't mind, but why all of a sudden?
I'm just genuinely curious.
In that case, I'll give it a try.
And so, Rachel agreed to take the IQ test. I was genuinely curious, but when I saw the results, I was shocked. The average IQ is said to be around 100, but Rachel scored an astonishing 130. The score was so high that I wondered if there had been some kind of mistake. Famous individuals with IQs over 130 include Einstein and Bill Gates, meaning Rachel's IQ was on par with theirs. Additionally, an IQ above 130 is often classified as gifted. Gifted refers to individuals with exceptional innate talents. These talents can include intelligence, creativity, artistic ability, or athletic prowess. Because their abilities are so extraordinary, many gifted individuals often struggle with a sense of not fitting in. Perhaps Rachel experiences something similar. Rachel, have you ever felt like life was difficult or overwhelming?
Well, I've struggled with communication because I couldn't understand the normal that others take for granted.
Just as I suspected, I immediately set out to create an environment where Rachel could work comfortably and encouraged her to take on tasks in her own way. At first, she seemed uncertain about having such freedom, but once she realized she could maximize her abilities, she proactively took on various responsibilities. Seeing Rachel's work ethic, other employees were inspired and began putting in more effort themselves. Amazingly, the company's performance also started to improve significantly. While it hadn't been declining before, there hadn't been any major growth either. Now, the company's rapid success had become a hot topic in the industry, and we started receiving more media coverage. It was clear that Rachel was the driving force behind this transformation, and I wanted her to take part in interviews. However, since she wasn't comfortable being in the spotlight, I ended up handling the interviews myself. During these interviews, I openly credited my highly capable assistant for the company's success, explaining how much I relied on her. This led to widespread curiosity about who my assistant was, and more people began digging into Rachel's background. The truth is, Rachel isn't just highly intelligent, She's also remarkably attractive. Her natural beauty had been understated due to her simple appearance, but with a polished look, she could easily pass as a model. Despite my attempts to stay vigilant, troubling behavior began to surface around Rachel. And then, the worst possible incident occurred. A paparazzo staking out in front of the company managed to take a photo of Rachel. Worse, they published the photo in a tabloid without permission from the company or Rachel, leading many people to see it. Although the article wasn't very prominent, the photo was clear, and Rachel began getting recognized and approached more often in public.
Wait, are you Rachel?
Well,
This is hilarious. You're like a celebrity. Social media is buzzing about the gorgeous employee at your company.
Even when I was walking with her, she'd get those kinds of comments. I could protect her when I was with her, but there was nothing I could do when she was alone. Over time, this stress took a toll on Rachel's mental health, and she started taking frequent leaves from work. Are you okay? Don't push yourself. Take it easy.
I'm sorry. I know there's so much work to do.
Don't worry about us. Just focus on resting. I said that, but without Rachel, nothing seemed to get done. I ended up working late into the night and asking other employees for help just to keep things moving. Since I'm single, I didn't have the added strain of missing time with family, but my physical stamina was reaching its limit. Even if I wanted to cut down on work, there was still so much to handle. But at the same time, I couldn't bring myself to push Rachel too hard. Caught in this dilemma, I felt like my mind was about to snap. I was also deeply frustrated with myself for failing to protect Rachel. She was struggling so much. Why couldn't I have supported her better? As I teetered on the edge of despair, I found myself unconsciously heading toward Rachel's home. Is it even appropriate for me, as the company president, to show up at her house and announce? Even as I questioned myself, I couldn't shake the need to see Rachel. I stopped by a grocery store to buy some easy-to-eat jellies and non-perishable foods, and with a mix of nerves and determination, I rang her doorbell. After a while, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps, and the front door burst open.
Carter, what are you doing here?
Well, I was worried about you, Rachel. Here, I brought this. I hope you'll find it helpful.
Thank you so much. I was just getting hungry. Oh, I love these snacks.
The snacks I had randomly picked turned out to be Rachel's favorites. She invited me in and asked me to wait in the living room while she got me a drink. I had only planned to drop off the food and check on her briefly before leaving, so I couldn't hide my surprise at how things turned out.
I never thought you'd come to see me, Carter.
I wasn't sure if I should, but I really wanted to see you. When I said that, Rachel blushed and looked shy. She brought out the snacks I had bought along with some tea. After chatting for a while, I headed back home. The next day, Rachel returned to work, and I couldn't help but feel relieved that my visit had made a difference. She seemed a bit more energetic than before, and I was genuinely glad I had gone to see her. Although she didn't come to work every day, Rachel showed up occasionally and contributed whenever she could. Rachel worked so efficiently that even just her contributions were more than enough to be a great help. I occasionally brought her small gifts or treated her to meals, supporting Rachel emotionally while encouraging her to keep doing her best at work. One day, as I happened to look at Rachel's face, I realized something. I was starting to see Rachel as a woman, not just as an employee. Initially, I had acted out of a sense of duty to protect my staff, but now it was different. Seeing Rachel smile made me happy, and I wanted to protect that smile forever. Once I became aware of my emotions, there was no holding back. Of course, given our roles as president and employee, I maintained a professional boundary. But my feelings for her grew stronger with each passing day, leaving me unsure of what to do. Then, Rachel announced that she was quitting her job. "You're leaving all of a sudden. Why?"
Actually, I want to challenge myself with new things. I want to study and take some time to explore different opportunities.
"I see. If that's what you want, I can't stop you." Her decision caught me off guard, but I realized the company could manage without her now. However, I hadn't come to terms with my feelings yet. Time continued to pass, and before I knew it, her last day at work had arrived. At this rate, Rachel would leave the company, and I wouldn't be able to see her anymore. Whether she knew how I felt or not, Rachel kept smiling as if nothing had changed.
Thank you for everything up to now. Thanks to you, Carter, I realized my own potential.
I should be the one thanking you. As we exchanged these words, I found myself hesitating. Can I really just let Rachel leave like this? As I was lost in thought, Rachel seemed to notice that I had something on my mind and asked me a question.
Is something wrong?
Actually, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Rachel, I love you.
What?
Her surprise was understandable. She probably never imagined that someone she worked closely with harbored feelings for her. After all, I had done my best to hide my emotions from her. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand, shocked and unable to respond. Honestly, I couldn't imagine that she liked me back. She had never given any indication of feeling that way, and I couldn't picture her returning my affection. As I braced myself for rejection, Rachel surprised me with her response.
Actually, I feel the same way.
Wait, you mean, you love me too? Rachel nodded, her face reddening as she shyly covered it with her hands. I was stunned to learn that she had feelings for me as well. Although Rachel eventually left the company, we began seeing each other as a couple. It had been years since I'd had a girlfriend, and dating made me incredibly nervous. While I knew Rachel well in a professional sense, I had no idea what she liked in her personal life. I didn't know what would make her happy or what kind of dates she enjoyed. Because of this, I often felt uncertain during our outings. But Rachel always enjoyed the plans I came up with, and I started to genuinely look forward to planning our dates. As our relationship grew, I noticed something about Rachel. There were differences between her work self and her personal self. At work, she was composed and diligent, but in her personal life, she was a bit clumsy and absent-minded, which made it hard to take my eyes off her. For instance, today she accidentally got marinara sauce on her new white blouse and looked so dejected. She had mentioned earlier that it was a brand new blouse, so it must have been quite a shock for her. While she went to the restroom to try and clean the stain, I slipped into a nearby store. When Rachel returned, I handed her a new blouse I had secretly bought.
Are you sure I can have this?
Of course, the stain didn't come out, right? Despite her efforts to remove it, the marinara sauce was still there. Rachel quickly changed into the new blouse in the restroom and came out smiling happily, walking with a spring in her step. Our peaceful relationship continued for about 6 months, and I gradually began thinking about marriage. I was nearing 40, and Rachel was close to 35. Feeling that now was the perfect time to get married, I spent 6 months preparing for the proposal and carried it out on our 1-year anniversary. Since Rachel wasn't fond of public attention, I chose to propose in a hotel room. It wasn't flashy, but I had the room beautifully decorated and gave her the ring by the window overlooking the night skyline. Honestly, I had thought I might remain single for life. I never imagined myself proposing like this, nor did I ever think I'd meet someone I could cherish so deeply. I'm truly grateful to Rachel for loving me in return. Rachel was overjoyed, and I was glad that all my preparation had been worth it. Afterward, we registered our marriage and began living together. Rachel was on a leave of absence for her studies, but she always prepared delicious meals for me. The house was impeccably clean, down to the smallest detail. I felt incredibly fortunate to come home to warm meals and Rachel's smile every day. However, work had recently become busier, and I often found myself coming home late. Sometimes I missed the last train, and by the time I got home, Rachel was already asleep, so I always made sure to quietly slip into bed without waking her. This lifestyle continued for several months until I eventually fell ill. At first, I thought it was just a cold and continued working, but my body gradually stopped cooperating. I couldn't even make it to work and ended up bedridden all day. By that time, Rachel had started working again and wasn't home during the day.
I'm sorry I can't do more for you.
Not at all. Thank you for always making meals for me. Rachel continued to handle chores, cooking, and cleaning after coming home, and I was incredibly grateful for her support. As my health began to improve, Rachel came home one day with a large bag. "That's a pretty big bag. What did you get?" What she pulled out of the bag was a bunch of snacks. The snacks Rachel had bought were the same ones I had brought her as a gift during my visit before. Looking at the snacks, Rachel began sharing her thoughts from back then. She revealed that while she had tried to appear cheerful, she had actually been struggling a lot at the time. My visit with the snacks had been a tremendous source of comfort for her.
And I think that's when I started liking you.
I had no idea she had feelings for me from back then. She must have hidden her feelings, just as I had, because of the dynamic between a boss and an employee. One day, a thought crossed my mind. Even though Rachel and I had been married for some time, we still couldn't completely let go of the dynamic of a boss and employee, and it didn't quite feel like we were truly a married couple. When I shared this with Rachel, she had a startled expression.
You're right. This dynamic has felt so normal for so long that I didn't even notice.
From that moment on, we made an effort to act more like a typical married couple. A year after our wedding, Rachel shared some exciting news.
Actually, I'm pregnant.
Really? Hearing this, I couldn't hold back the tears welling up in my eyes. At my age, I had somewhat given up on the idea of having children, so I never expected to be blessed with new life. I adjusted my life to take care of Rachel as much as possible, cutting back on work when I could. During pregnancy, it's natural for someone to feel physically unwell and emotionally drained. And yet, Rachel hardly showed any signs of struggling, which only made me worry about her even more. My concern for her grew so intense that I began taking time off from work more frequently. Rachel insisted I focus on my job, but I couldn't bring myself to leave her alone during such an important time. I chose to stay by her side as much as possible. Tomorrow is the due date. The baby hasn't been born yet, but I've made one decision for myself. That decision is to make my family happy. Rachel has faced unfair treatment in the past and likely still experiences some challenges in navigating life. And with a new life on the way, I believe things will gradually start to change. I want to be as attentive as possible to those changes and support Rachel every step of the way. Of course, I also want our child to grow up happy. To make that happen, I'll work hard, take breaks when needed, and give them as many opportunities and experiences as I can. I know I still have a lot to learn, but I want to grow alongside my child. I want to encourage his or her interests, let him or her try new things, and never make him or her feel hesitant to explore their potential. Balancing work, parenting, and household responsibilities will undoubtedly be challenging. Even during Rachel's pregnancy, things often felt overwhelming. I can only imagine how much harder it will be once the baby is here, and I'm sure there will be moments when we argue. Fortunately, Rachel and I have never had a fight before, and even when tensions arose, we managed to work through them by talking things out. But I'm confident that even if we face situations that lead to arguments, we'll be able to overcome them together.
Why do you look so serious?
Oh, I was just thinking about a lot of things. Sensing my feelings, Rachel looked at me with concern. Knowing she's the one facing the most challenges, I realized I couldn't afford to show weakness. With the determination to make my family happy, I reached out and held Rachel's hand tightly.